welcome to another session on practice handling complex state. So in the previous session, whatever we studied up till now regarding the usage of these complex states and the scenarios in which this would be applicable in our code, it's time to have a practice of that and to flex our muscle memory with this particular topic of ours. So let's directly jump into code sandbox. So in here, in front of me, I have my initial sandbox that will be your starting file to proceed with this challenge. So the task is very simple. It is to make the code in app.jsx work. So if we head over to app.jsx, you can see I have initialized one particular this stateful object of mine, in which it consists of 3 fields: fname, lname, and email. Previously, in the previous session, we saw that we had only 2 input fields. First was first name, the second was last name. But in here, we have added a third one called email as well. Now, similar to the previous one, we have a contact.fname here, which means the first name, whatever we type, should come here. Then contact.lname, that should be appended here. Now, in addition to that, we have a paragraph tag in here. This is something new. So what we are expecting is, as soon as we are typing inside this email field of ours, whatever email you write inside this should also appear as a paragraph tag below this h1 tag of ours in lifetime. Okay, and initially you have this particular thing. So let me show you what we are expecting from you guys in here. So let's say if I'm gonna type a name, this is the first name, this is the second name, and this is, let's say, the email address. So you can see, if we head over to our React developer tools, this app, and yeah. So if you try to expand this particular state of ours, so in here you see what is expected from the challenge completion. And now I would highly recommend you to use these React developer tools to look at how your state looks like while you are changing the code inside this. For example, when I write something, this particular thing is updating while both of them are remaining the same. So you have to complete this particular challenge and remember to apply the concepts of previous state, working with forms, handling events, etc., etc. What all knowledge we've gained up till now, a little bit of all of them will be applicable in order to solve this. So pause this now and give it a go. All right. So as first step, let's fork a copy of this sandbox of ours. Okay. So as we know, the first thing that we can see and the first thing that we can deduce what the functionality wants us to do is, whenever we are typing something inside the input field, something is meant to change, which means we are supposed to make use of the onChange method that is binded with these input field of ours. So as told you earlier, in Windows, the shortcut to have these multiple cursors is Alt, and you can keep pressing it for n number of lines if you want, and in order to turn it back into one cursor, you can press the escape key. So by using Alt, we'll try to type the onChange method into all of these, and let's call the function that will be firing, that will be calling once these onChange methods are called, handle change. Okay, so it's time to write our handle change function. Okay, so as we know that the onChange method, whenever it is fired, and whenever this input field, whatever text was in that is changed, this onChange will fire up. It will make a call to this particular function, whatever is mentioned here, and it will pass on an event to this handle change function of ours. Next thing that we need to do is let's make use of object destructuring. And which particular object will we make this equals to? Event.target. And you can see if inside this event.target I'll be able to use all of these attributes like name and onChange placeholder, not onChange, name, value, placeholder, etc., whatever is associated with our input field. But as we saw in the previous one, the two constants of variables that are of the most concern to us are name and value. So since we are destructuring an object, we are not free to rename them whatever we want. But if you want to do so, after writing precisely the same attributes in here as in the original object, you can use this colon and rename them into whatever you want. But let's keep them name and value only. We won't be having any problem for that. And then if we look over inside our contact object, the function that is the setter for this is called setContact. So let's make use of this setContact function of ours. Now inside this, as we saw, we need to make use, let me open this up inside another window. So we need to make use of the previous value that we have inside this object of ours. Why so? Because whenever we are updating something, then inside the setContact function, we'll only be updating that particular field of ours. And we want the remaining two fields to retain the value that was initially inside this object. So in order to represent that, I'll be using an arrow function, and inside is let us call this the previous state, which this is actually an object. We are calling it previous value, and we all know that if inside your arrow function you have only one parameter, you can remove these braces as well. And now inside this, I have to check which particular field I have to update, and on what condition will it depend on? It will depend on which particular input field actually triggered this onChange function of ours. Okay, so we will be using the if else condition, and we'll check if our name was fname, then we'll return what we'll return. Let's call fname something, lname will be something, and email will be something. Okay, and now what do we want them to be? Let's say initially we create them, or we make them equals to their initial value. Okay, we are making fname equals to previous value dot fname, this equals to previous value dot lname. Let me give a space here in order to maintain the consistency, and we'll make this prev value dot email. So in here, what we are basically doing is we are making them equals to this. Okay, sorry, let us mention commas in here as well. Yeah, since we are talking about an object and these are the fields inside it. So if the name was equals to fname, which signifies that the first input field actually triggered this onChange method, which in turn called this handle change function of ours. So we are saying that all the three attributes of ours, they should retain the previous value. Previous value was actually an object that consisted of the previous version of our contact object, and then while we are about to change something, we are initially just retaining all the previous values. All right, now let's copy this if statement and type it like this. Oops, I think I wrote if as well. So The second condition is that if name was equals to lname, this is the function, and the next condition will be if name is equals to the third input field, whose name is email. Okay, so now we all know that even if we write something in here, nothing is going to change, because basically we are not updating anything, we are just retaining the previous values. What we need to change in here is, if name was fname, then the fname needs to be updated. And what does this fname needs to update into? It's the value. What is the value? Value is the actual text that at the current moment is present in the concerned input field of ours. Okay, so if the fname input field called it, we're going to update the fname. If lname input field called it, we are going to update the lname. And if email input field called it, we are going to update the email, like this. So now if I hit save, and now if we try to work on this, you can see while I'm typing my first name. Okay, let's see them inside our React developer tools only. Yeah, don't know why it took some time. Okay, so inside these hooks you can see 3 attributes we have. The fname, if I write my first name, it gets updated. My lname, if I write this, it gets updated, while the fname retains its initial value. And my email, if I write here, email gets updated while retaining the initial 2 values. Okay, so this was basically what we hope to achieve in this session of ours. So if we see inside this code, behind the scenes, this name constant, it contains the input that triggered the handle change. The value is the value in here. We need to use this value in order to populate these different attributes depending on the changed input field, whichever triggered this handle change function. And at last, even though this code appears complete, there's one last thing remaining, and that is, in order to have a single source of truth. Okay, let's place this at the very end. Okay, so in order to have a single source of truth and to turn this into a controlled component, we will point these values and we'll bind it equals to our contact dot fname for the first input field. The second one will be lname for the second input field, and the last one will be contact dot email for the last input field. And using this, the app is now completely working, as well as following the standard practices, the standard notation of React. So if now I try to refresh it, and if I check this, it's working completely fine. Okay, so how was it? Were you able to solve that? If not, make sure to check out the previous session in which we talked about these complex, how to handle these complex state of ours. Now another thing is, in the completed version of our code in which we solved this particular challenge, you might have seen that the code that we wrote, it actually became very lengthy one, and stuff was getting repeated, all right, for all the 3 fields of our object, all the 3 attributes, whether fname, lname or email, they were somewhat similar to each other, all right. So is there a way in which we can further reduce this code in order to, let's say, a little bit automate it? And the answer is yes. In the upcoming session, we'll be studying something called the spread operator, using which all of this code that you see right now, that is such a lengthy one, this will be reduced to, I think, around 2 to 4 lines of code. So for that, we have to move on to the next session of ours. And for this particular one, that will be all from my end. I'll see you in the next one.